Joining me now from France, touring with the president, is Congressman Marc Veasey, Democrat of Texas. Congressman, thank you for joining us tonight. You're traveling with the president in France as details of the hostage rescue operation came out. What can you tell us about the reaction in the Biden camp to the news?
Yeah, obviously everyone here is elated that these hostages have been freed and that they were alive and that they seem relatively healthy. I think that is also important to note that the U.S. did provide overhead surveillance for this raid to help make it successful. And I've been saying all along that the faster all of the hostages are released or rescued, the faster that this campaign, that this war comes to an end, which is, I think, something that all sides want. And so I applaud the Biden administration for providing that overhead surveillance help to the Israelis, and congratulate the Israelis on a successful mission. And most importantly, these families. I know that for them to get their loved ones back are very important to them, and that must feel amazing tonight. But like the president said, we won't stop working until all the hostages are home, and that is going to be key to this conflict finally ending.
And of course, the president has laid out a proposal to try and do that. And there seems some reluctance on Netanyahu's side. We'll see if this changes as we move toward what the president has said, a two-state solution. Today, President Biden, with the French president, laid a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier in Paris. Take a listen to the president speaking from the beaches of Normandy yesterday.
The most natural instinct is to walk away, to be selfish, to force our will upon others, to seize power, never give up. American democracy asks the hardest of things, to believe that we're part of something bigger than ourselves. So democracy begins with each of us. It begins when one person decides there's something more important than themselves.
I was moved by President Biden's tribute to those brave Americans who fought and died to defeat fascism. But I also couldn't help but think of his opponent, former President Trump, who in 2018, according to General John Kelly, refused to visit the graves of fallen U.S. soldiers because he said they were losers. He spent this year's D-Day anniversary holding a rally in Arizona, complaining about his felony convictions and his hush money trial. Can you speak a bit about the importance of this moment and the contrast between these two men running to be our commander-in-chief?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Reverend, let me say this, because I would be remiss as Biden was laying that wreath. The black men that fought in the 320th Barrage Balloon Battalion that have never gotten their due for what they did on that day, June 6, 1944. So many people in our country think that it was an invasion that did not include African-American soldiers, but it did. And one of them should be awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously. And so I hope that that happens. But we need to give more recognition to these troops. And President Biden is the type of person that can make that happen, unlike President Trump, that would say things like that about our soldiers. And let me tell you, I don't know John Kelly well, but I know him well enough for my time on Armed Services Committee when he was still active duty. That is not something that he would make up. That is not something that...
And those black soldiers were fighting even though at home they had to live under Jim Crow laws. Let me go to this.
Absolutely,
you represent a district just a few hundred miles from the U.S.-Mexico border. This week, President Biden announced an executive action to limit the number of daily asylum requests after Republicans in Congress killed a more comprehensive immigration bill to please Trump, who wants to run on the issue in the election. Can you talk about the significance of the Biden order and the damage Republicans are doing by playing politics rather than working with Democrats to address the problem?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I support the president on trying to clean up a lot of the disorder at the border that, quite frankly, is the fault of President Trump. President Trump went to Speaker Johnson and said, do not let President Biden pass this comprehensive immigration reform bill because it will make him popular. We need for people to keep being bused. We need for people to continue to see masses gather at our border. Because if that goes away, then Biden will get reelected. Everybody knows that it happens. All of my Republican colleagues knows that it happened. And that is why President Biden had to sign this executive order. It's Congress's responsibility, and it is the Republicans' responsibility to put a comprehensive immigration reform bill on the floor that we can pass. And this one, quite frankly, and I want to remind everybody, the senator from Oklahoma that put this bill together, he got a 100% rating from Club for Growth. That is how conservative he is. So for people saying that it was the liberal bill and that it allowed thousands of undocumented in a month, that's just not true. That is a lie. That is an absolute lie. This was considered the toughest, and we saw it from conservative news outlets. We saw it from the editorial page of the Wall Street Journal. This was considered the toughest immigration bill that has ever come through Capitol Hill, and Republicans killed it because they wanted to help Trump. And that is the type of stuff that the American public is sick and tired of.
Now, Congressman, before I let you go, we're out of time, but we've been talking about D-Day and the legacy of those who served there, including roughly 2,000 African-American troops, many of whom came home to fight against Jim Crow discrimination in our own country. Our next guest, your colleague, Florida Congressman Byron Donalds, someone Donald Trump is reportedly considering as a vice presidential pick, has suggested black families were more together under that regime of segregation. What's your response to that?
I know Donald well, and I'm surprised that he said that because, and I've heard other people say things like that before, but what people forget is that during segregation, that black educational attainment rates were much lower than whites. When you look at the black poverty rate during that time period, it was astonishingly high. And all of those things have improved with Jim Crow being erased. And of course, I would never be in Congress were we still under Jim Crow. I think about how I got my start as an elected official in the state legislature. The county that I'm from, you had to be elected county-wide to be a state legislator. You could not get elected in a single-member districts because they were illegal in Texas. And all of those things disenfranchised us and held us back. And so things weren't good under Jim Crow. Regardless of what the marriage rates may have been during that time, we have excelled. We have gotten ahead. We are doing much better post-Jim Crow. And I need for my Republican colleagues to understand that.
And we still have a long way to go, but we've come a long way.